Yom Kippur, you think about the day where you go in shul and you listen to the cantor, you associate it with wearing a talis, holding your prayer book, wearing a white kittel, and spending most of your day shaking and praying. You know, to strengthen your relationship with Hashem. It might be a surprise for you, but thousands of years ago, when the Jewish people were in the Holy Temple, which God willing should be built very soon, speedily in our days, Yom Kippur had a different image, completely different than what you know of it today. The concept was the same, but the method was much different. In the times of the Beis HaMikdash, you didn't get to hear the rabbi's sermon. Maybe it was a good thing, maybe not. But you cannot hear that wasn't the highlight of Yom Kippur, the rabbi's sermon. Not even the cantor singing. The main thing was bringing the sacrifices and the prayers of the high priest. The Kohen Gadol put on special white clothing. Then he switched to gold clothing. He went to the mikvah 5 times throughout the day. And the highlight of the day was when he went into the Holy of Holies. And that was the only time that he was allowed to enter into the Holy of Holies. Now, what was the reason he entered into the Holy of Holies? As you see here in text number 1, right over here, he went into the Holy of Holies to ask God to forgive the Jewish people on their sins. So the portion speaks about in length about the service of Yom Kippur. We read this on Yom Kippur during the Musaf service. Here is a fascinating prayer that the Kohen would say to ask Hashem to forgive the Jewish people. Now, by the way, you didn't pray. You did not stand there and make prayers like you do today. The high priest was the one that prayed on your behalf. So you were not involved in any prayers. You just stood there and maybe you answered Amen or whatever it was, but you were not involved in prayer like the high priest was. Then the Kohen would stand and he would bow, as we see here in text number 2b, which we do on Yom Kippur. We say this prayer, and everybody would say maybe Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Olam Vod. And then he concluded in text number 2c, he would ask Hashem to give everybody a good year. They should not have to come on to others. They should be able to be healthy. No woman should have a miscarriage. And the fields should grow. Our animals should multiply. We should multiply. And all the blessings that the Kohen would do. This prayer in text number 2d describes the prayer that we would say how beautiful it was when the Kohen would leave the Holy of Holies. And the idea was, he looked like a rainbow in the clouds. It looked so beautiful to see the high priest coming out of the Holy of Holies. Okay. Now, since it was very important for the Jewish people that the Kohen should be, representing everybody, so the Kohen had to be spiritually, mentally, and physically prepared for this unbelievable service that the Kohen had to perform. So if you see here in text number 3a, 7 days before Yom Kippur, they would keep the Kohen and second in command, which was called the Skan, almost like vice president. For 7 days, they would get him ready. Does anyone know why they prepared him for 7 days? What was the purpose that they would put him in quarantine, so to speak, for 7 days? What was the reason?
Maybe because that's the day that Aaron eventually was the one that's able to practice the sacrificing after Moshe's 7 days of building and doing the actual practicing of the offerings. Maybe.
Okay, what do you say, Brian?
Yes. So he wouldn't become like inadvertently defiled and inadvertently
so
defiled.
He wouldn't be impure. So you're both correct. I mean, but the main point of the 7 days is because if he would become impure, he has a 7 cleansing day process, and then he would be unfit to be able to work in the temple. So we put him separated from his wife. He was completely in a separate room in case, God forbid, he would become impure. Now, they would also get second in command Kohen to also be in quarantine, just in case the high priest himself did become impure, and then someone else has to be qualified. Here comes a fascinating statement. Text number 3b. Rabbi Yehuda says that you must appoint a woman to become the high priest's wife in case the Kohen Gadol's wife ends up dying before the time of serving in the temple. This is an opinion in the Mishnah. Now, I'm not going to get into it, but other opinions disagree with it because they say that's ridiculous. Why would you appoint someone else in case his wife dies if she's not sick or there's no reason to think that she might die? But the purpose of this is, why do we need to appoint another woman? So on Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol is required to be married. How do we learn it out? We learn it out from the verse here in text number 4. If you look at the conclusion of this verse, it says, and he shall effect atonement for himself, for his household. Torah says clearly household. We learn from this statement of household that the priest must be a married man. He cannot be single, as we're going to explain in a moment. Now, he must ask for atonement for himself and his household, which means his family, means he must be married. Now, the verse literally means he shall effect atonement for himself and ba'ad beiso for his bias, for his family. Many people say that it means literally his wife, meaning he must be married to perform the service in the temple. These are playing with the words. As we see here explained in text number 5 from the Maimonides, that it must be a married man. Now, here comes a question. First of all, I don't think this guy in the photo looks like the high priest by any means, so I apologize for the photo. But
for sure he's married, right? And that should be his wife.
Yeah, hopefully he's married, or maybe he's trying to propose to her to get married. You never know, but it looks like they're married. He's bringing 2 coffees and some flowers, so probably they're married. But the question is like this. First of all, why are they required? Why is the priest required to be married? What does that have to do with Yom Kippur? And if he's single, or if, let's say, his wife died, what's the requirement to be married? And if you say it's required to be married, why wouldn't the Torah make a clear statement that you're supposed to be married? Why use the word married with the word beisom, which literally means your house? Why do we refer to his wife with the words his house? Why don't we use it with saying his wife, for him and his wife? So in order to understand this, let's speak about families. It's very important to have children and to raise children. There's other religions that see marriage an outcome of weakness. The reason you're getting married is because you're weak. They look at it as the most physical act a person could possibly do. They say it's like idol worshiping. In Judaism, we all know that family is the center of our religion, far away from anything connected with sin. Multiplying is a big mitzvah, and it's very sacred. If you see this text up on the screen, there's a conversation between an ancient Persian Christian scholar with his student that had a conversation with a Jew, and his student argued with him, and he said, look at the entire Torah. Now let's go through a list as you see here in text number 6. Number 1, when God created Adam, he told him right away, be fruitful and multiply. When Noah came, when the flood was over, God said again, be fruitful and multiply. Abraham, God said, you should be as many as the stars in the heaven. Again, multiply. Then God said to the Jewish people, there was a blessing that God gave the Jews, that no one should be barren. Everybody should be blessed with children. God gave a blessing to Isaac that his wife Rebekah should have children. And the list goes on and on. You know the famous story that we say in the Haftorah on Rosh Hashanah? Hannah was not able to have children until she finally had. Who was her child that she gave birth to? Hannah the prophet. Who was her child?
Shmuel.
Yeah, the prophet Shmuel. So this student told him, you are stopping people from having the blessing that God gave us to multiply. It's a chutzpah. He told his teacher, the Persian Christian scholar, this is a terrible behavior. Now we see that thousands of years ago, the values that Jews place on concept of families put us apart from cultures, from other cultures, and other religions. Now, it is the first mitzvah that God told Adam, you shall multiply. So it's a very important commandment. You know, Judaism views the notion of having children and building a family. This is the purpose of the creation of the entire world, as we see here in text number 8. Purpose of creation is to multiply. The Rebbe spoke on this topic very passionately in many occasions, pointing out that the fact that Hashem writes it's the first mitzvah in the Torah, as the Rebbe explains here in text number 9, means it's a crucial and very important part of your life to have children and many children. Every Jewish child, the Rebbe concludes in this text, is like a candle, and the purpose of the child is that it should be a source of light to the entire world. Now we understand why the term of marriage, instead of using the word wife, we use the word bayis, which means home. In Judaism, marriage is not only to develop a relationship. Of course, it's important in the marriage, but there's something else important, and that is to build a family. In Judaism, to bring children is not your choice. It's the values of Judaism. You cannot think of marriage without building a family. Of course, there's space between them, meaning there's time for the children and there's time for your spouse. But The job of the woman and the man is to change, to transform the house to a home. Everyone understands that when you get married and you have a home, the purpose of the home is not only to have a place to sleep and to eat, but a home is a place where you transform your life from being single to being married and raising children. And when children come into the picture, you're building a family. Your home becomes uplifted. The family becomes part of your DNA. It becomes who you are. This is who your family, this is what it is. Your DNA is your family. You know, two partners that chose to live together is not just to do transactions with each other, but it's all about the family, to influence the world. Now it becomes from a house, it becomes a home. Judaism puts a strong emphasis on family. When the Torah speaks about marriage, it uses the word home, as we discussed before. It does not mean that you shouldn't focus on your spouse. Of course, that's important. You know, you should have a good time together, buy each other gifts, express love, sometimes express frustration to each other. The Talmud gives many examples of husband and wife, how to nourish each other, how to make each other happy. The Torah tells us, even in here in text number 10, that in the first year of marriage, the husband is exempt to go out to the war because he's required to make his wife happy. He's required to spend the first year of marriage making his wife happy, which will affect the rest of their marriage. And that's why he's not required to leave to the war, unless the war is an emergency. That's an exception. If you look in the Maimonides in text number 11, he says a fascinating statement. Our sages told us you should honor your wife more than you honor yourself. You should love her like you love yourself. If you have enough money, listen to this statement. If you have enough money, you should buy her gifts based on your wealth. Do not make her scared of you. Speak to her calm, and do not be angry and depressed all the time around her, unless you're privately putting yourself in a bad mood, that's fine. But when you're around your wife, this is specifically speaks to the man. Meaning, of course, you have to build a family, but we must put the emphasis on each other. Anything we've spoken about does not, God forbid, minimize the relationship that there must be between you and your spouse and to strengthen it. God forbid to look at your wife that she's just a vehicle to procreation to have children. Your wife is just here to make you children. No. You have to honor her and love her and so on and so forth. Now, what we are saying is that with this, being mindful of this, having children must be part of the marriage. To look at marriage exclusively in the domain of human relations or self-fulfillment is not compatible to the view of the Torah. In some point of the marriage, it's an obligation and a mitzvah to bring children. Now, here we come to explaining and answering our question that we just discussed. Oh, here in this picture, the guy's at least wearing a kippah. All right. You know, the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, he's representing on the holiest day of the year, in the holiest place of the world, and the holiest man is representing all of the Jews. It must be someone that's a complete servant to God. He lives his whole life with the plan of the divine to get married and to build a family. If he's single, the Kohen Gadol, it won't be complete. But to be married is not enough. We call his wife his family, as we said before. Beso zu ishto. The Kohen Gadol must be someone that's married and ultimately build a family. Husband and wife build it together. If it's not on his radar, he's not a suitable candidate for working in the temple. As we see here in text number 12, anyone who does not have a house is not a person. Literally, this means if you don't have a home, and God forbid you're homeless, you're not called a mensch. You're not a person. You don't have anywhere to go sleep. You don't have anywhere to eat. It basically means you cannot feel important if you don't have a home. At the end of the day, where are you going? You need to put your head down. Where are you going? You need to take a shower. Where are you heading? So being without a home, you're not a mensch. God forbid, being homeless is very sad. In another way of looking at this text number 12 is forgiving for you and your spouse, which we call that your home. When the verse says that the Kohen has to be married, we refer to his wife as his home. On the holiest day of the year, in the holiest place of the world, it must be a real, complete person that could view his entire life, as the Rebbe says here in text number 13, that could view his entire life. Something so important like marriage, of not only being married, but raising children. I do want to discuss in a moment, although everybody, thank God, on this class is married and has children, but I do want to discuss something very important in case you want to discuss this topic with someone else that either is not able to have children or did not have children and they're too old to still have children. So it's important to make a couple disclaimers, which I'm going to discuss as soon as we're done, the next point. So the message here is very obvious. You know, the Torah puts tremendous values on having children. Not only those cute little kids running around, but also the children that you or one of us or someone you know might soon be bringing into this world. You know, we live in an age that success is measured by someone's accomplishments in the office and not at home. Again, we live in an age where someone's accomplishments are measured by what they accomplish in the office, not by what they are accomplishing at home. Many years ago, people would feel satisfaction and fulfillment by building a family. The office and the job was a responsibility and a duty. Today, unfortunately, it's the opposite. And then you wonder why there's so many failed relations and dysfunctional homes. And there's more and more people that choose not to have children. The home must be the center of our life. The greatest thing you could have in your life is to bring children and to raise them with truth and strength in the path of godliness, as the Rebbe explains here in text number 14. You know, successful people that want to praise themselves or praise their wives or their husbands. This is such a beautiful thing to say. Look how special of a mom I have, or how special of a mom my wife is. How well she raises the children, how well our family is running. They should list, they're listing the 50 wealthiest people in the world. They should list the 50 most beautiful families, not beautiful in the physical looks, but the beautiful in family time, family getting together, family getting along with each other. Pious Jews throughout the generations would treasure these values of family. We have to bring it back full force. For those that are starting a new life, if you're not sure if it's for you or not, look at the holiest man in the world. The Kohen Gadol had a requirement to serve the congregation by being married and raise a family. This is an important part of our life. I do want to conclude with, so to speak, a disclaimer and explain this a little better. Unfortunately, there are people that so we've spoken about the responsibility and the merit to have children. Unfortunately, there are some women that are not able to have children for whatever reason it is. Or maybe they weren't able to find the right husband, or the husband was not able to find the right wife to marry. There could be many reasons why people do not have children, not necessarily by choice. Well, first of all, the fact that they're not able to have children is possible to say that they have a different mission. Their mission, their commandment of having the children doesn't necessarily apply on them. Just quickly, there was a story where this man was fighting in the Israeli army, and he said, if I survive, he was in a very dangerous section of the army, and he said, if I survive, I take upon myself to put on tefillin every day. And thank God he survived a very harsh battle. I think it was during the Yom Kippur War. But unfortunately, he lost his left arm. And he was so upset that he was not able to fulfill his promise to put on tefillin. Because if you can't put on the tefillin on your left arm, you don't put it on your right arm, you just can't put it on. You only put it on your head. So he was very disturbed. He went to many rabbis and they gave him all kinds of excuses and reasons. It's okay, whatever. He went to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and the Rebbe told him, you are going to fulfill the mitzvah of putting on tefillin in a different way. You don't have the arm to put the tefillin on. You are going to do that mitzvah in a different method, meaning if you can't put on the tefillin, meaning this mitzvah is not apply on you, and your connection with Hashem is through other things. Jacob was very angry at his wife Rachel when she told her husband, if I don't have children, I'm like considered dead. Please pray for me that I should have a child. And her husband explained to her, and as we see in the commentaries, how the outcome was that you're not considered dead if you don't have children. You have a different mission. To be more specific, the Rebbe spoke to this woman here and wrote a letter to this woman here in text number 17. The Rebbe explained to her how, for whatever reason it is, you weren't able to have children. As I said before, the Rebbe went into details of what is her mission in place of having children. So I want to read a few texts which will help us understand this. If you look here in text number 18, there's something very fascinating. It says in the second portion of the Torah in the book of Noach, so you have Bereshis and Noach. It says, these are the children of Noach. Noach was a righteous man. Wait a minute. Why doesn't it say, these are the children of Noach, and then list his children like it does in the next verse? Why are we saying these are the children of Noach? Noach was a righteous man. So Rashi says right here in text number 18, this teaches you that the main concept of children is your good deeds. So your good deeds is very important. So think about something very special that you did in your life. You caused someone else to do something good, and then that person might cause someone else to do good. It's almost like the fruit off the tree. The tree bears fruit, and then the fruit have more fruit until there's no end. So children could be physical children, but it could also refer to the good deeds that you do. Here comes another statement. It says, these are the children of Aaron and Moshe. Look at the conclusion of this verse. It doesn't list Moses' children. It lists only Aaron's children. Rashi explains here in text number 19b, Rashi explains, whoever teaches someone Torah, it's like they gave birth to them. So when you study Torah with somebody, they are like your children. So it's important to get married and have children. But like I said before, there are circumstances, especially if a woman, for whatever reason it is, was not blessed with being able to have children. The children could be many other things as well. Good deeds that you do. Teaching others Torah, teaching others how to be good people, teaching others how to follow the Torah. This is your children. And by the way, if you look at Moses, Moses had two children, Gershon and Eliezer, but after he passed on, Yehoshua, which wasn't even his physical child, took him over after he passed on, which means it's the good deeds that he continued.
Rabbi Mann?
So, one second. So it's most critical to realize how meaningful a childless life is, and how meaningful it can be by bringing many children through good deeds that you do. So our point here today is as follows. The Kohen Gadol in the Holy Temple had to be married. Purpose of the marriage was because he had to have a family. It teaches us that the holiest thing on the holiest day of the year, he had to be a married man, which is building a family. And by the way, it does say that the cantor, even today in the synagogue, should be someone that has children, not a single man. Because when he has children, he has more mercy, he's more passionate because he has his own children. Yes, who had a question? I'm sorry.
Hi.
With some,
Yeah, I came in late, so you might have addressed this, so forgive me if you did. Is it having children or is it being a parent? Because what if you adopt children? And I mean, is it parenting?
we're specifically talking about having your own children. Of course, if somebody cannot, then they adopt. But the point of the class was to encourage people to get married and have their own children if they can. If they cannot, then it goes in the category of what I was just discussing, that you could adopt a child and raise a child. But the teaching others is the same idea, inspiring others, not parenting. And learning with others could be just like having your own child. But the Rebbe did encourage people to that couldn't have children. I think the Rebbe did encourage people to adopt.
Is it because also the Rebbe didn't have children himself that he figured that all of us are his children?
I have no idea. I'm not going there, Ruvain. The Rebbe was a holy man, and I'm not gonna comment on that.
That's fair. That's fair, Rabbi.
I'm not gonna step in those boundaries. The Rebbe was so holy. I don't know.
Well, that's my point, to say that if he didn't have kids, we are like his children. We learn from what
That's
he's
right.
taught.
Exactly.
That's what I'm thinking.
The Rebbe has
Love it.
thousands and thousands of people that he inspired. Exactly.
Right. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Very true. Yeah. But Baruch Hashem, I think everybody on this call has children. So my disclaimer wasn't even
Baruch
necessary.
Hashem.
But if you
But-
share this with someone else, or maybe you have a brother or sister or someone that it's time for them to get married, I could share with you the class, and you could